Are you ready to unleash your full potential and become unstoppable in your success and leadership?
Welcome to the Unleashed and Unstoppable podcast, where we provide powerful insights and strategies for coaches, corporate leaders, and entrepreneurs. I'm Lianne Carter.
And I'm Carol Register, and we're certified master neurocoaches who are passionate about helping you overcome your limiting beliefs and optimize your performance.
Each week, we'll be sharing actionable tips and strategies using neuroscience, from interviews with industry experts to solo episodes to help you lead a life of power, purpose, and possibility on your own terms.
Join our community of like-minded individuals. Hit subscribe now, and let's be unleashed and unstoppable together. Hey, how are you? Alex, Lianne, and I are super excited to be here with you. We are pumped. As you can tell, we're in the high energy, even while she's got a baby sleeping in her lap. That's precious Amelia. And Alex, Lianne, I'm super excited to be back with you, with Amelia joining us, because, oh man, what a beautiful part of your soul, who you are and what's going on right now. I am so excited that we are bringing you stories and insights, deep insights, so that you can unleash your power and become unstoppable right now, right where you're at. And we're going to leave you some actionable tips today. We're super excited to talk to you about some of the things that have been going on with us and with our clients. So, hey, Alex, Lianne, can you?
Hey, Carol. Hey, everybody. And yeah, if those of you watching the YouTube video, you can see we got little Amelia with us. And yeah, like that power piece, Carol, that you just leaned into. The topic that we want to dive into today is really when you have awareness of this. And I think when you make a shift, it really provides you with more power, right? And so what we want to really dive into today, because we are noticing that this just seems to be really coming up for a lot of our clients. We've experienced this ourselves in the last couple weeks and months, is really being able to be unattached to how things look, right? Being unattached to how things look. So Carol, can you dive into that a little bit and maybe explain a little bit like what that looks like in case the listener is like, well, what do you mean by that?
So, you're going about setting your intentions. And if you're here with us, we know that you're into leadership, you're into neuroscience, wealth, and becoming even better and better and more powerful leader is about leading yourself first and trusting yourself. And so when you're looking at letting go of the outcome, well, I had a client recently who was really attached to the way the outcome looked. Mm-hmm. And, really bottom line is what comes up in my mind immediately because of my own journey is the perfectionism, right? And so that's what it's all about. It's about setting that intention and creating the reality that you want to create in your unleashed power. But are you okay if it's messy? Are you okay if it's not even messy, but if it's different than you thought it was going to be? And that difference really can play a part in our head, right? And so she was getting into the analysis paralysis, very much part of my story, overthinking, and not really in her full creativity and in her full rest and flow, because all this was hitting her about how it had to look in the end. Do you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say is a lot of times what can happen then is lead to shutdown, right? Lead to hiding, lead to not being truly authentic to yourself, getting caught up in the psychological assessment because you're overthinking things because of externally how things you feel have to look and should look. And a lot of times when we work with our clients, we realize they're getting caught up in the mechanics of the things, again, how it should be looking versus back to the intention of sort of the why underneath what's happening to begin with. And then, we find our clients, and we've been there too. We get lost in that why, like why we're doing the thing. And we're focusing so much on the fears and the judgments that we perceive will happen because of the way that it looks. And so that's why we're really looking at leaning into like being unattached to how it looks. How it looks is usually like the external piece. And I love what Carol's leaning into is really it's about what's inside of you. And as a leader, like how are you showing up to lead and doing it messy? Because, fail, quote unquote, is the first attempt at learning, sorry. And so really taking that messy action, taking actual action versus like freezing and pausing and
or psychological assessment. You use that term and I like that.
And inaction, right? Like getting not into action. Or I also, I know myself personally will experience some anxiety. Yeah. And then I get so in my head and I just kind of freeze. That's why that was the word I was looking for before. Is like a lot of times you get that, right? We've talked before about the fight, flight, or freeze, but that's oftentimes what will happen. And then, you're not moving forward. And then you're not showing up as that true, authentic leader that you get to be because you do get caught up. And so that's why we are so passionate about talking about being unattached to how it looks and on the other side of that is being able to release judgment. And I think that's, we were just talking earlier, right, Carol, before jumping on about how a lot of times where this stems from is this fear of judgment that comes up.
The judgment cycle, the judgment loop. And even when we were talking earlier, what we start to think in our minds when we get into this psychological assessment and freezing, and I just want to pause here for a minute. Has that happened to you? And especially recently, have you been hiding, listener? Have you been freezing from doing some of the things to move forward that you want to do? And in this judgment loop, right? And the judgment loop is, I'm nervous that what I want is not going to happen. And so I'm putting it out there and they're going to judge me for that. And when in reality, we're judging them, thinking they're judging us, right? And it's just this vicious cycle. But the same time a vicious cycle exists, so does a victorious cycle. Mm-hmm. And that's the exciting part, right? And really, one of the things that I loved about what you were saying is that when we are in judgment based on external circumstances, we're not holding somebody else to their highest self. We're really not holding someone in leadership. We're preparing a thought that we don't even, we're creating this reality, right? We're putting this out there that, this person's going to judge me. But what if that's the farthest thing from their mind, And in fact, what we hear most often is that they're busy in their own heads because this is our beautiful brain trying to keep us safe by keeping us stuck in these comfort zones. This is not safe to go out here and stretch this way. Don't show up. That's not safe for you. And we have to remind ourselves about what's possible for us and what the outcome can look like. And so how do we get out of this judgment cycle? How do we get out of it? How do we hold other people higher in their leadership?
Well, the first step really is just acknowledging it, right? Just acknowledging that perhaps you're judging yourself or perhaps you are judging others. Because we always talk about that, right? Like the first step is the awareness piece, just acknowledging that it's happening. And it might not necessarily be immediate necessarily. Yeah. The other invitation would be just pay attention to how you're feeling. And, are you finding yourself really getting caught up in your thoughts? So a lot of times when this is happening is you find yourself spinning. And so just that acknowledgement piece about this is happening and then get really curious about what is coming up. And then I find a really great question to then ask yourself is, am I holding myself in my highest? Am I holding the other person in their highest, right? Because the moment we have these fears of how we feel, that somebody else might perceive us in a negative way is the moment we know that now we are not holding them in their highest, because we are putting on them that they are going to judge us, and we take their power away.
Yeah.
And as leaders, it's so we get to, when we said, we started right about the power, we get to stand in our power, and we also get to hold those around us in their power too. And so leading with curiosity, asking questions, and really looking at the greatest outcome that could be perceived versus going with the negative. And we know that our brains are automated to go to the negative, right? Like for every one positive thing, there's 10 negative things that follow it. And
or
so,
every 10 things, 9 of them will be negative. And
something like that, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you've heard us before talk about, between 90 to 97% and of our thoughts are automated, and not a lot of them do. It's the automatic to go to the negative. And so
that 90 to 97% is the decisions that you're making that are based on what's wired into your subconscious. And you're making these decisions based on this operating system without your awareness, right? And so then I think this leads in beautifully, Lianne, to what happens when you freeze. I know when I've experienced freeze before that I wasn't able to be logical. I really, my brain was in full on survive mode, and I couldn't figure out, I knew, because of the intellectual part, I knew that I was stuck, but I couldn't figure out in that moment how to get out of it. Listener, if you have been in that survival mode, whether it is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, Alex mentioned a couple of things that are so important. If you can only remember one in that moment, just remember the word curiosity. Just relax and get curious. Let go of everything else. Just curiosity.
And something that you have me thinking when we talk about being able to let go is something that I find that I say to myself is bless and release.
Yeah. And you mentioned asking questions too. Bless and release, though. Yes. Just a key phrase that you are empowered for you to come up with that will serve you in that moment when you're in the survival state and you're getting your brain back to thrive, back to creativity. That's where your power lies. When you want to unleash your power, that's where you want to go to, is you want to go back into that state and out of the overthinking that's led you into freezing and hiding and not wanting to show up and let your voice be heard, because your voice matters. It's super powerful, important. And I just want to take a moment to really acknowledge you, Lianne, for being here as a mom with a baby, with all of you here with us listening, how powerful that is. Because when we talk about unleashing our power and being empowered as women, female empowerment, being leaders, and Lianne is an unbelievably fabulous corporate leader and leader, period. She specializes in that corporate realm, and she continues to teach university classes and is very involved and committed to helping us be the best leaders we can be. And she's here as a leader. She's showing up and she's letting you know that, no matter what your circumstances are, that you can do that too. And she's committed to serving us and loving us all. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Carol. And thank you to our listeners, right? You who tune in and support the podcast and feed the motivation to be able to be here and show up. And just when we take a stand for the women that we serve and really truly getting to create that life that they get to truly create, this is part of it. And so I love being able to be here and be able to serve you while this little one naps and being able to, give back and share the knowledge that Carol and I have developed over the last couple of years as neuro coaches, and just really taking a stand for you to be able to create that impact and not end up, overworked and burnt out in the process as you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are things that come up because it is our brain working to keep us safe. And that awareness, just having awareness. Oh, I'm hiding, I'm frozen, I'm overanalyzing. Alex, Lianne, it reminds me because I was just leaning into this about being able as a leader to let go of perfectionism and do it messy.
Yeah.
And that's a part of what we're talking about when we look at the outcome. And, then my mind went on a rabbit trail. Well, I don't want my airline pilot to do it messy. I don't want my physicians to do it messy. How do I reconcile releasing perfectionism and judgment in order to have what I really want, create what I want? So how do I reconcile letting go of perfectionism with things that are really important and that we want? And immediately realized, and I want to call this out for you, listener, that it's a false construct. Why is it a false argument? Because that pilot spent many, many hours learning on a simulator, practicing mock crashes, doing it messy, failing to get to that place of precision and excellence. So did the physicians. Physicians start on cadavers, not on live people. And so it isn't about perfectionism. That's the counterintuitive part. And so many things that we teach from a neuroscience perspective are indeed counterintuitive. And so it's through the taking of action, through the taking the risk and letting go of what it looks like, being willing to let it happen in a messy way. I just had that happen. I thought I had plugged in my computer while we were recording. And in fact, I had forgot to flip the switch on the surge protector. So no, it wasn't charging as it should have. And here we are doing it messy. Right. And the important thing is the substance of you being you standing in your power, you getting your voice out there, you impacting the lives that you want to impact as a leader, as a high achiever, and that you get to do it through a series of taking risks, despite the fear coming alongside, despite the hiding, despite the overanalysis and the perfectionism that shows its face, and being willing to let go of the outcome, being willing to just bless and release, as you were saying. Replace it with curiosity. Curiosity is a powerful antidote to judgment, and holding others to their highest by not presuming that they're judging, but believing that they're standing in their highest leadership, drawing them up, elevating them, is also elevating yourself, right? So,
well, exactly. And, you said something earlier, Carol, that I just wanted to lean into before we wrap up here today about the like taking action and taking that messy action, and how it really is, over time, you're collecting evidence for your brain. And so if you have, a lot of times where we get stuck is that expectation and this judgment and that external perception that we perceive. By taking action, you are collecting evidence for your brain to be able to allow you to release that judgment, because you're now getting to realize and see that, oh, this worked out, or, oh, that person didn't react that way, or that didn't go the way that I anticipated. And it's really, really, really powerful, because the more that you can release and the more that you can really let go of how you think that it has to look, right? It's that have to's, the shoulds, all of that.
Yeah.
You really surprise yourself.
Yeah.
And then you it gets easier because you're able to release that tension that oftentimes comes with it. You're able to release the anxiety, and you just show up in such a more authentic, true way to yourself. And it's just so freeing, right? And I think that's why I like the bless and release kind of piece, because you are just like releasing, and it is so freeing. And then it allows you just to operate so much more from that unleashed unstoppable, because you do become unstoppable at that point, right? Because you're not letting the perfectionism and the expectation kind of hold you in this cage. You're free, and you're yourself to be able to show up the way that you are, true and authentic to you.
Yeah, I love that so much, because it takes the pressure off, doesn't it? It's just like, okay, releasing the pressure. I'm letting go of the outcome. I'm just going to go for it. And, it's like the universe rewards risk takers. We've talked about that. That was a quote by Floyd Blankenfein, I think, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs. And I may be saying that messy. And, but it does, when we take the pressure off of ourselves, it moves us into flow. It moves us into thrive in our brains instead of survive, and into creativity.
And we get those neurochemicals, right? That help fuel that. And that's what we're able to release, which helps us handle the hundreds and thousands of things that are coming at us as leaders, right? Like every day. So for the listener, what we wanted to invite you today to lean into, to be able to apply the strategy to really be able to really lean into being unattached, how things look, is to really look around and be curious to, where are you placing judgment on yourself, and where do you find yourself placing judgment on other people? And then when you can identify that, really lean into what's underneath that, and get really curious in terms of what's the judgment coming from? Because usually the judgment is led by a fear. And so just to get really, really curious to that. And when you can identify and spot where that judgment is coming up, our invitation is to bless and release that judgment and go for it anyway. And being able and prove yourself, right? Collect that evidence to show yourself that it gets to be easier, and that you get to let go of that judgment.
Yeah. And we get isolated in that, don't we? And I think it's really important that that we have communities that are available for you. And especially over on Facebook, we have Productivity and Wealth Secrets of High Performing Leaders community. Don't be isolated in this. Make sure that you're reaching out. We're here for you. Make sure that you're jumping into community and getting the support as you start to take a look at what Alex was sharing with you, to look at where you're judging yourself and others, and to get curious about it, so that you can replace, neutralize, and erase what's causing it, what's underneath that. So thank you for being with us this week. We're excited to share these things with you.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Ciao for now.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unleashed Unstoppable podcast with your hosts, Alexandra Carter and Carol Register.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review, and subscribe.
That's all for this episode, Wildly Ambitious Leaders. See you next week.